Will the new anti-piracy code curb Australia's downloading habits?
Should we be up in arms about metadata? Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm here with a pirate who always sticks to the code, Alex Kidman. Alex, what's new in tech?
Vodafones announced new sharing deals for its Red contract customers, which allow you to share not only data, but also calls and text allowances across multiple phones. It's not a free deal, however. In order to get a SIM on an additional phone, it'll cost you at least $30 a month. On an additional tablet, at least 10. But either of those fees, and they do scale upwards, will also give you some additional data. The company's also announced a streaming content deal with Stan, although the details of that are a little sketchy at the moment. It appears as though Vodafone customers will be offered free Stan subscriptions in the same way that they can currently get free Spotify or Fairfax subscriptions.
Australia's mobile network providers might be forced to recall millions of SIM cards after it was revealed that US and British spy agencies stole the encryption keys required to snoop on users. The keys give the agencies the potential to snoop on data and text and perhaps even listen in on live calls.
Roaming overseas can be painful on your wallet, but it's rarely all that fast, especially if you're using a prepaid roaming SIM. Global Geeks announced that it's cut a deal with both Optus in Australia and 3 in the UK, so that if you're using one of their SIMs, you'll actually be able to access their 4G networks. They've also announced a raft of new countries that they offer for their worldwide plans.
Plans for Australia's multi-technology mix NBN are taking shape, with NBN Co signing a deal to upgrade Australia's HFC pay TV cables. The deal will upgrade the cables to the DOCSIS 3.0 standard and also at least double the number of Australian homes connected to the pay TV cable network.
So Adam, Vodafone's bitten the bullet and they're offering shared plans, something Optus has done, albeit only with data for a while, but do you think these things make sense?
They definitely make sense for some people. They definitely make sense for households. We're a Telstra household, but we've got shared data between my wife and myself because I've got business mobile plans. And that saved us money recently because we were out and for some reason we needed to use a lot of data, so I could eat into her data allowance. So in the end we only went a little bit over. Whereas if I'd only been able to use my data allowance, we would have gone a lot over. And that's the first time I've had to use that. And so it's suddenly I can see the real value in that. Now, we don't make a lot of calls and send a lot of text, but if we did, even if there was the kids were old enough to have their own phones as well, the ability to dip into each other's allowances when you need it could make a lot of sense. So I think for a lot of people it'd be a good deal.
Yeah, I mean, certainly this whole sharing thing is not new in the business space, but it is a lot newer in the consumer space. Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting, though, that Optus and Vodafone have come at this from different angles. Optus's thing is just that you get access to data sharing. That's all that they're fussed about. And yeah, I think data sharing is probably the thing that I would want the most of, because for a lot of plans, the amount of calls and the amount of text that you get, you got to be very, very keen to burn through all of that.
What I've got is as good as unlimited for me.
Kind of plan, but
it's more than I'd ever use.
And Gemalto's SIM cards might not be that secure, so should we be ripping them out of our phones and going back to tin cans and string?
It's hard to say. I mean, Gemalto is saying that there's not a problem, but of course they're going to say that, so we are going to have to wait for some independent analysis here. And you sort of got to say at the same time, well, yeah, you could switch to something else, but who's to say that the spooks haven't broken into that kind of thing as well?
It is that classic kind of security scenario where ultimately you're kind of not meant to know. And I mean, having said that, there are some privacy implications here. This idea that warrantless, without any kind of record, mass surveillance, that's a bit on the nose as well. But it's not, I guess to a certain extent, you're right, it's not exactly surprising news, and it's perhaps not something where we've got the whole story just yet. No,
but it does raise some interesting issues, such as with the metadata laws in Australia. They want to keep the metadata, and they're saying, oh, but this won't be abused. There are all these rules we have to follow on how we use the data. And then it's clear that some foreign spy agencies do not care about the rules at all and just do whatever they want. Yet we're supposed to believe hand on heart that Australia would never ever do that. So,
absolutely. Power never corrupts, absolutely. Didn't you
never,
notice at school?
Never. So yeah, people who say you've got nothing to worry about, yeah, this proves that we do have things to worry about. So Alex, Australia's telcos have released a draft policy on how they're going to crack down on piracy. Do you think it can work?
Well, I think it's got some potential to work, but it's never going to solve the whole problem. I mean, we've said this countless times that piracy is not one of those things that you can apply a legal fly swatter to and 100% eliminate. But what's really interesting in this draft code, apart from the fact that they're currently open to public comment on it, is what they're choosing to implement. And they've chosen to go with this whole kind of 3 strikes idea. So you get the first 2 notices basically say, yeah, look, you're doing something you shouldn't. Here's why you shouldn't. Here's links to local available content that is legitimate. Don't do it again.
Yeah.
On that third one, then your details can be passed over to a copyright agency, and presumably they can opt to, seek legal redress with you, whatever that might be, and that may vary depending on the nature of your heinous crime. But there's all sorts of weird little bits in this draft which are either missing or aren't particularly well weighted, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, one of the big things that's missing is who's going to pay for this system, because someone's got to foot the bill somewhere, and it looks like it could be foisted on the ISPs, which then means it's foisted on us and we pay for it. So we should all Australians have to pay for the fact that someone else doesn't want their stuff stolen? Should we all be presumed guilty?
Yeah, look, I mean, this issue of who pays for tracking potential copyright infringement, and we've got to say, it is potential copyright infringement. There is no such thing as a 100% strike rate to say that somebody is actually pirating something because a file name says something or because an IP address suggests something. You got to throw the big allegedly up there. But the big sticking point has been, well, who pays for that? Because technically it's the copyright holders who own the stuff and who profit from it. So maybe them. They argue that the ISPs are providing the channel by which it's done, so it should be them. And they're genuinely, there just doesn't seem to be anything in this. The only bit of payment advice in there, and it's a nasty little hook, is that you can appeal these notices. Now, of course, you should be able to appeal these notices, but you can't appeal every notice. You can only appeal the third notice, the one where they say, we're going to hand your details over to the copyright people. Yeah. And it'll cost you $25 per throw to do that, non-refundable unless they say, oh yes, actually they were wrong. You cannot appeal those first 2. And the way it does this is it tracks it over a 12-month period. If you get 3 of these in a 12-month period, that's where the legal option comes in. If you only have 2, then that's not the case. But you can't appeal those first 2.
Is there any need to appeal them? Because as far as we know, there are no consequences other than don't do it again. If there was actually some kind of punishment for getting those notices, then you'd be more entitled to some kind of appeal.
Except that the way that they're talking about IP-based identification, and that means if the 2 of us are sitting on the same network and you're pirating something and I'm not, but I'm the one who's paying for it, as in I'm the one who's paying for the broadband connection, I'm the one who's going to get your notice. And
allegedly, because I would never sneak around to your house and do that. No.
Clearly, that would never happen.
You should change your password.
In that scenario, you pirate something, allegedly, I pirate something, allegedly, suddenly I'm on 2 notices, which I cannot challenge in any way, as the code currently
reads. I see what you mean. You could get up to 3 notices when you think you didn't deserve to get that many.
And of course, if you just get
But at that point, you can appeal any of them, though. You can appeal any of them. You get your 3 notices. But
only at that 3-strike stage. Yeah. It's also, there's weird little bypasses to it as well, because it only applies to residential connections. It doesn't apply to any kind of mobile broadband connection, although really if you're downloading movies off a mobile broadband connection, you can probably afford them because, damn, the cost of that data is going to kill you. And at the same time, it doesn't apply to business connections either. So presumably they're saying, well, look, don't pirate at home, pirate at work.
You might see a lot of primarily residential ISPs who offer some business plans suddenly start offering 500 gig and unlimited business plans that they never bothered to offer before because they have more appeal now to some people. You would need, I suspect, an ABN to get one of these, but it's not actually that hard to get yourself an ABN.
Yeah, I mean, having said that, I don't think getting a business plan will just be your bulletproof solution.
Yeah, I wouldn't be relying on that alone.
But the fact that it excludes them is kind of unusual. And I mean, the whole thing is, admittedly, it is a draft. It's not final code. It's not what they're finally going to implement, although they've only got till September this year before the government forces them to implement something. But it's not the final code. And as I said at the start, they're actually open to comment. So quite seriously, if you're interested, go and read the code, go and comment on it, because I think it's going to be about the only instance where there's going to be open public consultation. Now, it doesn't mean that they'll pay attention to what you've got to say. There's some news out today that suggests that the Attorney General has in fact only really been meeting with the copyright holders and not with other concerned groups such as Choice. But this is your chance to at least have a say. So I'd suggest that people go for that. So Adam, is it actually coincidental that the discussions around piracy are happening at the same time that there's discussion and seemingly new legislation around metadata?
Oh no, I think it is certainly not a coincidence. Even if it's possible that by the time people are watching this, that the metadata laws may have already been, or the legislation may have already passed, because they are hell-bent on pushing this thing through. The Greens are worried that Labor's just going to roll over and say, yes, whatever you want. The Greens will do their best to try and stop it or make some amendments to it, but it is no coincidence that these things are being talked about at the same time. If you look at what the ISPs will have to do, they're going to have to increase their metadata retention anyway to meet the piracy code, because they're going to have to keep track of people's IP addresses. So even if the legislation doesn't get through at the moment, the ISPs are still going to be forced to do something, and once they're introduced a metadata retention scheme of in some way, shape or form, it's a lot easier to bring in your scope creep and just expand that.
Yeah, I mean, the piracy thing's an interesting one, because the way the code goes at the moment, there's still some impetus on the copyright holders to inform the ISP, look, we think this person is doing naughty things, TM. But having said that, if you got to that third strike stage, I could very easily see a case where a copyright holder might say, right, now we know you've also been collecting the metadata on everyone, so let's have a look at their specific metadata. It could be used as supplementary proof, if nothing else. Has there been much clarification, though? Because this is the thing that always seems to jump out whenever the government starts talking about metadata. Do they really know what metadata is? Are they explaining it particularly well?
No, they have no idea what metadata is. There's one of Malcolm Turnbull, for example, has a better idea than the rest of them put together. He can at least articulate it, unlike some of the others. But no, they don't want to clarify it. And
so is that deliberately vague, or is that just...
Yes, it is deliberately vague, so they can. It allows scope creep. It allows them to make it up as they go along. It allows them to get whatever they want to get. I heard someone from the Australian Federal Police talking about it the other day, and they were saying the legislation does not, the proposal does not specifically say that we want URLs, addresses of people's browsing history. It doesn't specifically ask for it, which is not the same as it won't be in there.
Completely. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And so that is a real grey area. That's one that the government struggled to explain. And even if they get it through now and say, oh, we won't be collecting your browsing history, it's only a small step to go there. And we only need some excuse for the Prime Minister to get up and say, oh, it is essential that we keep this information. Once we go down this slippery slope, it's going to slide very fast. And there will be more and more. They say, oh, there are strict rules on who can use this information. But as we were saying before, not everybody likes to follow the rules. Yeah. So, yeah, we're really setting ourselves up. But this is one of those things that if we pass it, it's too late. You can't look back later and go, you know what, maybe that wasn't such a great idea, because it will just expand. These things they never get rolled back. They only ever expand.
I think one of the other things that really stands out to me about this particular debate is it's being presented as, right at the moment, as this kind of silver anti-terrorism bullet, that we must have metadata collection because it's the only way we can fight the bad guys. But there's so much evidence. There's so much evidence, both sadly of tragedies that have recently happened, but also of other instances where metadata really didn't have much to do with it, and there was an awful lot more plain world reporting and, surveillance of people who, may or may not have been up to evil things, shall we say. I'll throw an allegedly there in as well, just to keep the lawyers happy. That had nothing to do with metadata, and yeah, at that point you kind of go, well, it's not actually a silver bullet. Maybe it's a tool in the arsenal, but it's not this massive, we've got to have it to keep Australia safe. We've perhaps got to have...
Oh, yeah, but then we play the Won't You Think of the Children card.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not just about terrorism anymore. Now it's about tracking down child sex offenders as well. Unfortunately, we can't still say it's cracking down on communists. They were the good old days when we could blame the commies for everything.
But the Reds
so
were
they're
under
pulling
our
out
beds.
all
It
the
was
usual...
easy to spot
I know.
them
Yeah, it was. But so they're pulling out all the stops. It's one step away from the, if you don't support metadata retention, then you must be a pedophile. That's the direction that we're heading in, which
that's
is
a big call,
everyone in tech. But that's what people have been accused of in the last couple of years. If you didn't support any kind of government crackdown on communications, then you must be a bad guy. You must be a pedophile, or else you would support this. And we're getting,
what have you got to hide anyway? Nobody's
yes,
interested.
and
Which
that's the
ignores,
card they're starting to play with metadata. And as soon as they play that card, it tells you that there's something not right here. You really should be asking tough questions when they feel that they need to play that card to get this through.
So that just about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hold.
Thanks for joining us, and remember, if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. Do